You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Welcome in. He's Dusty Hara. I'm Anthony Leverage. This is your Weekly Sports D&A. Dusty, welcome to the show, man. I hope you had a great holiday, great Thanksgiving, man. It was a fantastic time at my place.
It was a whirlwind. I mean, it happens quickly. I had family up from Arizona, LA, the local family was all here, but it was great to have everybody one place together, and then boom, it gets done and we're scattered. We're going everywhere, every which way.
Yeah, I had my first time I've said this. I had my daughter home from college for a holiday, which was kind of weird. It's one of those things, right? You pick your kid up at the airport and bring her home and then take her back to the airport. So this was our first time bringing her home for a holiday. And then my son, member of the Lake Oswego Laker football team, got called up for varsity as a freshman for the playoff run and got to watch his Lakers win a state championship on Friday. Big congrats to Coach Corey and his staff and all those players. Capped off a pretty remarkable season in a really dominating performance. It was super fun to watch.
Yeah, that winning a state title is impressive by any measure. It doesn't matter what level you're at, what state you're at. It is incredible to just go through and see what it takes to win a state championship. So congratulations to the Lakers.
I think I've heard you say this before, and I've said this a lot in my life. Winning's hard.
Winning is very hard.
Winning one game's hard. Winning a conference championship is hard. Winning a state championship is remarkable. And I'll tell you what, in this world, we're gonna dive into the college coaching conversation later on today. But for Steve Corey to be where he's been for 34 years, this is his 34th season at the helm at Lake Oswego. Pretty crazy, and some big time guys in the state of Oregon stepping down this year and retiring, and it's going to be kind of I think Steve's going to hang around for a bit longer, but kind of a changing of the guard here in the state with some of these coaches stepping down.
The amount that he has been able to win through so many different iterations of what high school football has looked like, what it takes to win, and he has won at the highest level every single step of the way. 34 years, you think of how much has changed just demographically in the state that he's in. It went from 34 years ago, there was only 1.5 million too many people living in the state of Oregon.
I was 17.
You have that. you have that like in the Portland metropolitan area right now.
Yeah.
And it's nuts to see how he has adapted and kind of changed with everything. And that's what every great coach does. The adaptability to the landscape that you're in.
Yeah. Congrats to them. It was fun to watch. And
great guy too.
Yeah, he is. He's for any high school coach out there listening, the thing that he was on my podcast and interviewed him, and his deep belief is that winning should be a byproduct of all of the good things you do around developing young men. And obviously he's lived that. And I've watched it happen now as a parent in the program. And it's a pretty good way to go about running a high school program.
Look, every coach says that, but very few practice it. And that's the secret to success. Everybody wants to say, what's the secret to winning? It is living what you preach and not setting expectations that you wouldn't set for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. And having perspective on what you're actually doing. There is this cutthroat idea of what high school sports and youth sports are now, but that is completely missing the entire point of what high school and youth sports are. And it's growing people, because 99% of them will never go on to play beyond the high school level. So setting them up for success in life. But in order to do that, you have to have your ducks in a row too. And there's been a lot of coaches that have come through and had spurts of success, and it goes away rather quickly because they go and they will jump from one spot to the next, or their message wears thin because it's not how they are living the life that they're preaching that their young athletes should be living. That it really comes down to that.
I agree, and I've watched it done poorly. I've watched it done well, and when you see it done well, it is a refreshing. this youth sports industry now, the youth sports industrial complex. It's a $30 billion business in our country now. And it used to be and still should be an ancillary part of the education process, and that has gone away at scale. But when you see it done at the local level and have a chance to see it done right, you hope that others will see that, and that we can get back to that, and it's cool, and a big congrats for them for winning, but for doing it the right way.
No doubt about it.
All right, man. You just said Ducks in a row. So let's talk about the Ducks first. Big Ten had a huge plate of games this weekend, kind of set up what is going to happen next weekend, and then how that's going to get into the college football playoff. We're going to get into the college football playoff pretty deeply here today, but let's start with just kind of a recap, some of the big games that obviously that Oregon-Washington game, the Ohio State-Michigan game, the Iron Bowl, a great weekend of college football. But you had a front row seat for one of the biggest games, at least on the western part of the country. What did you see from the Ducks, and how big was that win for them up there in that what had to be a beautiful setting on Friday?
Yeah,
Saturday,
I mean, it was beautiful, but it was hostile, and that's exactly the way you want it. And I think that's a great part about college sports and college football in general, is that we can say all we want about the professionalization, the transfer portal, NIL, all that stuff of college athletics, and how they're losing us. No, make no mistake about it, that game meant a lot to the players, to the coaches, to the fans, because it's a rivalry. And you don't like the team on the other side. The fans don't like the fans on the other side. And that is what makes rivalries great. Jed Fish has to look in his office now at his wall, right under the Adidas logo on his wall in his office. It says "Beat Oregon today." And they didn't do it on Saturday. And you could tell it stung for everybody there. But, Amari Washington, the defensive lineman for Oregon, after the game, I asked him about that because he's a junior. He was there 3 years ago when UW beats Oregon twice in the regular season, and then in the Pac-12 championship game, on the way to Washington, going and losing in a national championship game. And he said, it just means so much, because I think of all of the guys that I looked up to when I was a freshman. And he's like, in this locker room here in Seattle, with tears running down their face, and because of how much that game meant to them, and to get a win and go back and go to Seattle, which is a really tough place to play. And Washington played their asses off in that game.
Good football players.
To go and get a win there, it means something.
Yeah.
It means something to a team that has now college football playoff is solidified for Oregon. They were going up against an unranked team, but a rivalry game still means the world to win. And what it meant for all of those guys, that was really cool to see. And that was my favorite part of being a part of any rivalry game.
Does that remind me about my best rivalry story at some point in time to tell you on the air, the Utah BYU rivalry that I was a part of for 8 years. At the end today, maybe make that your question. Maybe you got 2 questions for today, but I'm going to give you an answer that you're going to love. Does that move Oregon into the top 4, do you think, in the CFP, or what does that do for them, and kind of how do the conference championship games play out in deciding that top 4, top 8 positioning?
Yeah, and that's a great unknown, right? The committee has been pretty transparent, and this goes back to the 14 playoff as well, in that they say if you play in a conference championship game, that will not penalize you.
And it shouldn't.
It really shouldn't, because it's an extra game, and there's teams that are not playing, and Oregon is one of them that will be on the outside looking in. And I think that is the right way to look at it, right? You shouldn't be knocked out of the playoff because of a conference championship game. Your seeding should not be dramatically altered based on the conference championship game. That's when I look at it and I say the AP and the college football playoff won't mirror each other when the penultimate rankings come out on Tuesday. Right now, you have.
Penultimate's a great word, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, great word.
The AP top 25 has Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Georgia 3, and Oregon 4. That is because Texas A&M, who was undefeated, not a lot of people bought. They weren't even the top 100 in strength of schedule heading into their game against Texas. They lost handily to the Longhorns. They were at 3, and they moved all the way down to 7 in the AP top 25, which you get based on the way that game played out and the quality wins that they are lacking on their schedule. For Oregon, I don't think that that's what the college football playoff top 4 is going to look like. Because remember, this year, it's not your top 4 highest ranked conference champions that get a bye. It's the top 4. And I think if you are an Oregon fan, kind of worst case scenario is Oregon is at 4th in the final college football playoff rankings, because that means they would go from November 29th to January 1st without playing a game. That is over a full month without playing a football game.
It's that health versus rust thing, right?
It was hard for Oregon. Look at the way the playoff played out last year. Yeah. Every single team that had a bye in the first round lost. Yeah. They all lost in that first round. So that would be a massive one. Also, I don't think the committee has the balls to say
zero chance.
3 of the top 4 teams in the country are from the Big Ten.
That was going to be my question too. Do you think that they're ballsy enough to do that? The SEC there would just be mutiny across the board.
And look, the SEC can complain and cry all they want. They had all of the tiebreakers in the world at play. If you play 9 conference games, it's going to sort itself out a little bit easier. Look at the Big Ten. These massive conferences, they have an issue with not being able to play each other.
So the Citadel's not in the SEC?
It is not in the SEC. Now, do Big Ten teams have games like the Citadel? Yeah, sure they do, but they play them at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
They don't play them at the end of the year. You add a 9th conference game, and it's going to sort itself out a little bit more. You saw it in the Big Ten, right, where it came down to tiebreaker, but if it came down to tiebreakers, you would have had Oregon played Indiana. Indiana won. They are in. Okay. The Big Ten has 2 undefeated football teams. They are playing in the Big Ten championship game. That is a no doubter, no brainer. The SEC was a mess coming into the final weekend because it could have been Georgia. It could have been Ole Miss. It could have been Texas A&M. It could have been Alabama. Like that, they were in those scenarios, and now it's going to be Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship game, and that game is a rematch of a game that is played earlier. If they would have played 9 conference games, this whole thing would have sorted itself out a little bit earlier.
They are going to go to that next year, though, right? The SEC has made that change.
But you look at the rankings, and they currently, the reason why the SEC doesn't want to do it is because they have Georgia at 3, Ole Miss at 6, A&M at 7, Oklahoma at 8, and Alabama at 10. They have 5 teams. They could take up 5 of the 12 playoff spots.
Is
easily.
Texas out in your estimation?
I don't know. I get it. Texas is playing really good football right now, and they are a team that I don't think anybody would want to play at this point in the year. But the reality of it is, they're saying, well, come on, look at our schedule. Look at the wins that we have. We beat Vanderbilt. We beat Oklahoma in a rivalry game. Yeah, but you also lost to Georgia. You lost to Ohio State. Okay. And those are really good teams. And if you have those 2 losses,
you're good.
Nobody is going to knock you, and everybody's going to believe it. You lost to Florida,
who fired their coach midseason.
A 4-8 Florida Gators football team. When you have that 3rd loss and that is it, I'm sorry. You don't have a leg to stand on in this. Look at the other teams. Who do you want to hold out of this college football playoff if Texas is going to get in? Are you going to hold out Alabama, who's playing in the SEC championship game, and they had a loss at the very beginning of the year, which, by the way, that Florida loss was not at the very beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Alabama lost their opener. And then the only other blemish that they have on their schedule this year is a loss to Oklahoma. Okay. They beat Georgia.
It's a good win.
That's a really damn good win. They beat Vanderbilt. They beat Missouri. They beat Tennessee. But you know what they also didn't do? They didn't lose to a South Carolina. They didn't lose to Wisconsin, which was also on their schedule in a non-conference game. They didn't lose to Auburn, even though they flirted with that disaster. The teams that are at the bottom of their respective conferences, they didn't lose those games. And you can't hold those teams out. Now, Notre Dame, you could say, all right, well, maybe Notre Dame shouldn't be in. Why? They lost to Miami and Texas A&M their first 2 games of the year. They were 0-2 coming out of the gate. They've won 10 games in a row. Now, their best win is USC.
So how much does that schedule matter, right? So we're saying Miami's not getting in, right? You're right now you're saying
no.
And I want to give myself a shout out here for being a Duke football fan for 4 weeks to create this crazy part of this craziness. 7-5 team in the ACC in the conference championship game is, I think it just proves how bad that league is right now.
Yep.
And how much work they have to do to catch up with the SEC and the Big Ten. But doesn't that win over Notre Dame have to mean something? I mean, head to head has to mean something, right?
Yeah, sure. It does. Week 1. Teams get a lot better after week 1 and week 2. And that's why you put the Citadel early in the year, right? And that's why you don't put them at the back end of the year. But Notre Dame has got a problem in that their best win is USC. And I think that is a legitimate concern because a lot of teams in the playoff and in that conversation also beat USC this year.
Yeah.
But for Miami, it goes back to the same thing as Texas in that, look, we know what the game is. The game is you cannot lose to Louisville and SMU and still find your way into this. Like the SMU win, it's not a good win.
No, it's not.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
And those are bad losses. The wins that they do have, and this is what the committee says that they covet, is quality wins. What's the best win Miami has? What it's Notre Dame week 1.
That's it.
It's week 1.
Which is why, as a coach, like in my head, I have a hard time wrapping around the fact that we don't that the head-to-head thing should matter. But the thing that everybody in college football is fighting when you're talking about Notre Dame is God, right? Like it's hard to root against, it's hard to fight against God. But the brand has to matter, right? That golden helmet, and people are going to say, no, we don't take that into account. We look at the resumes, all that stuff. But I'm telling you right now, they're human beings, and that brand matters to the eyeballs that are watching that game.
And they had beginning of the year, Notre Dame was breaking a new starting quarterback. It was a situation where they were testing some things out and trying out a lot of new pieces. Guess what they did in their 10 wins in a row? They said Jeremiah Love is one of, if not the best running back in college football.
Yeah.
We are going to lean on him. And they have leaned on him.
Yeah.
And they have figured out their identity. And that's why the beginning of the year is completely different than the end of the year. Show me how you're playing at the end of the year. And look, Miami had a great win over Pitt in cold weather, a little bit of snow coming down. Usually that is Miami's going to lose this football game. They played a hard-nosed game, and it was no doubt they beat Pitt. But I also don't think Pitt should have been a ranked team, but they were.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you look at with this is manufacturing of ranked wins. The ACC did not have 5 teams worthy of being in the top 25 last week. They didn't.
No.
They just no ands, ifs, or buts about it.
Right now, it's a bad conference. There's just, you can't get around that.
No.
Yeah.
And the wins in the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, they are weighted far more than any ACC win right now. And that's what's going to hurt Miami. And look, it's what is leading to hurting the conversation around Notre Dame.
Do you think that this ranking then will be the 12 teams that are going to get in, and it might adjust a little bit more? Do you think there's the one that's coming up here on Tuesday, do you think that the following week is just going to be shuffling of those 12 teams?
Yes, to an extent. I don't know who the 12 seed is going to be. I don't know if they're going to give it to, James Madison. Are they going to give it to North Texas? Are they going to give it to Tulane? I don't know who they're going to give it to. And that's a tough spot for the committee to be in. outside of that,
But the 11 Power 4 schools, if you're in it this week, you're in it.
and whoever wins the ACC championship game between Virginia and Duke. I mean, you could see the ACC champion being the 12th seed, though. I mean, if Duke wins that game, they might be the 12th seed. And the group of 5 is going to have the higher seeded team.
It's unbelievable. This is a complete tangent. Why are they so bad? Why is that separation? Because I know the TV revenue has gotten better for the Big Ten and the SEC, but that's new, right? Like that's a new development. The ACC's had plenty of TV revenue, and I know they were pissed at ESPN and trying to get out of a deal, and the whole thing with Florida State. But why? It's not like there's not enough good players in the area that they play to recruit from, right? Like there is talent-rich areas in the areas that those schools play in.
Leadership matters. And
you think it's at the conference level leadership, president level leadership?
This is where the ACC, I do. I think it's leadership across the board, because the Big Ten and the SEC both said we're going all in on football, and they built their conferences around football. Okay, we're seeing that work to their advantage.
Yeah,
you have in the Big 12, they leaned in heavily to basketball and said we are going to build a basketball powerhouse. And they leaned into that very hard, but there were certain schools, Texas Tech being one of them, that said, well, we got oil money. We're just going to throw as much as we can at our football program too. And the Texas Tech basketball program, not bad.
No, they're good.
They're a really damn good basketball program.
Boy, they can guard, man.
Grant McCaskill is a good coach.
They can flat guard. I love watching them play.
But make no mistake, the Big 12 said we're leaning into basketball. The ACC said, well, historically we're a basketball conference, but we don't know what we want to be.
Yeah.
And that left them in limbo in football. And look, the reality of where their biggest downfalls are with their big brands is that everybody said the ACC is the next conference to get pillaged. We saw the Pac-12 had a very difficult time winning at a really high level in the final years.
Well, your point about leadership at that conference level, I was the head coach of Utah when Commissioner Scott was the commissioner, and the leadership that the presidents allowed him to just kind of carve his own path, and that decision not to sign with. We'd rather own our own station than pair with the giant ESPN and get into a pissing contest with DirecTV. You want those are the two reasons right now that at the top of it why there is not a Pac-12 conference as you and I grew up with.
No doubt about it.
And that all came from, you can call it I absolutely piss poor leadership at the top, but really bad decision making about what we thought we could get done on this side of the country.
So the entire narrative around the ACC is that it's a conference that isn't as good as the other ones.
Yeah.
They're just not as good. What is the selling point of the ACC? Well, that goes down to recruiting as well.
Yeah.
Because recruits see it. And then you had your marquee brands have been in limbo for a really long time. And like, this is the hard part. And this is where Miami has a struggle, is that Miami is doing the right things and building it the right way. Mario Cristobal has a handful of losses inexplicably every single year that you go, how do you lose that game? Why are you losing that game? But he is building that thing in the right way. Clemson, which was your anchor, they had a refusal to adapt to the transfer portal, and all of a sudden Dabo Swinney is not as cool as he once was, and you're not winning at a high level. Florida State.
Turns out that winning is the cool part.
It is. Florida State leaned too heavily into the transfer portal, and they missed on guys.
Yeah.
They missed on guys. They had an opportunity, but they leaned too heavily into it. And it's really hard to build your roster just off of transfer guys together. So they don't have anchor in dominant programs. Their leadership is terrible, and they're at a revenue shortfall compared to the other big conferences. Those three things right there, that's why the ACC is where they're at.
So that's for another show. So I think we can. I was going to talk about the business of college football today, but we're going a little long. I think we're gonna bring that back in a couple weeks when there's the lull between here, and I think it's a fascinating conversation that we can get into But for now, let's stop bashing on the ACC.
All right.
As much fun as it is.
Hey, go Duke.
Go Duke. That's right. Go Devils. All right. Let's talk about the as the world turns coaching saga. I have a pretty what I think is an interesting perspective on this, having gone through on a different level what Lane Kiffin has gone through of having options to go somewhere. I'll give you my thoughts on that. But as you're kind of seeing this entire landscape of, I mean, when did Kentucky start caring about football? Apparently yesterday. They fired their coach. Jonathan Smith gone at Michigan State after 2 years. The buyout, we're going to have to recalculate this thing because a few weeks ago it was at about $200 million. It's going to be north of $300 million of buyouts in the Power Four.
300 million or 30 million just for Jonathan Smith almost gets you to that 300 million mark.
It's 37 for Stoops at Kentucky. It's crazy. What are your thoughts about kind of the way the whole thing played out calendar wise and using the Kiffin one? But this is not just about Kiffin. All of these jobs are the same way, right? That people scrambling to get these jobs filled, get commitments from coaches because the calendar and the way recruiting happens versus the way we continue playing meaningful football games while that's happening. What are your thoughts about that?
My thought is that everybody that cries about the world of college football being broken because of NIL and the transfer portal, I've always said that the biggest thing here is it was an unlevel playing field. The coaches could leave at any time and they would run for the money
100%.
And everybody would just be like, well, these players got to stay.
Well, so this was my point all the time. Coaches didn't have to take a redshirt year if they left before they could coach again.
Yes.
And we made players take a redshirt year if their coach left, if it was a bad experience, they weren't playing, family member died, didn't matter what it was. We have to sit out a year before we get to play. It just is completely backwards.
And we see like it continues to happen where I just don't get it. Like they ask the players to do something that and look, the media plays a huge role in this. College Game Day was sitting there like, if Lane Kiffin leaves, he should be able to coach the Ole Miss Rebels in the college football playoff. Why in the hell would Ole Miss be like, yeah, you know what? You're going to a rival of ours in LSU. And yeah, you're going to sit there and take a lot of our players next year when you go. You're going to take a lot of our coaches when you go next year. Why in the world would we give you that opportunity? And then the reports are Lane Kiffin was threatening to say, if you don't let me coach, I'll take all the players now and I'll take all the coaches now as opposed to at the end of the year. That is absolutely ridiculous. And one of the greatest tweets that I saw, and I don't know who tweeted it out, but it deserves to be mentioned, is that somebody said, if there was anybody to burn a bridge while they're still standing on it, it's Lane Kiffin.
Oh, and he's masterful at it.
And everything that he did in this process was the wrong way. And that's what's broken in college football. Like what needs to happen is the calendars have all got to align.
That's the first thing that has to happen.
And there's got to be guardrails and parameters set up to where the transfer portal, coaching changes, and signing day.
We have a free agency period, right? For coaches, players, and how we're going to pay.
But none of those things should be during the season.
Yes.
None of those things. And all of them are happening during the season.
Yeah.
And that's what makes everything so disjointed and so broken. And if you look at a lot of these schools that they just absolutely nosedive, it's because they fired their coach in the middle of the year. And then all of a sudden, this chaos that we're seeing, as we were talking about with the rankings, is because a lot of teams just turned into disarray because they fired their coaches. Guys are starting to enter the portal or take a redshirt year because they don't want to be part of a lost season. What needs to happen, and I am wholeheartedly 100% in on this. You mentioned the rest versus rust thing with the college football playoff layoff. We need to get rid of conference championship games and not make them for conference champions, but make them for qualifiers, right? So it's not we know Indiana and Ohio State are getting into the playoff. We know Alabama and Georgia are getting into the playoff, but why not play Ole Miss and Oklahoma to see who gets in from the SEC?
Is there movement to do that?
There's a little
Or
bit.
is this Dusty Harris
There,
like dream world while you're driving to?
It's not my original idea, but it has been floated out there that
I love it.
Yeah, this is how you do it.
Let's get you on the committee.
But you could have those sorts of games, or and the reason why they'll never get away with conference championship games is because of the money. The money is just too big. But if you eliminate that weekend of college football, that because the committee is telling you it doesn't mean that much to us, like nobody's getting in outside of the ACC champ and the group of 5.
I would push back just a little bit. It may not mean much to the committee, but as you talked about the rivalry with Oregon and Washington this weekend, it meant something. Winning a conference championship, having done that, I got fortunate to, between regular season and postseason, win 11 of them in 18 years of college coaching. And I remember every single one. Our players remember every single one, right? Like those things do matter to the student athlete.
Yep.
And I know it's a pro sport now. College football and college basketball is a pro sport now, but it's still, you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, man. And it's I don't know how I feel about taking those conference championships away.
Then what you could do, if you don't want to do that, we have these mega conferences where not everybody's playing each other. Then you just have 2 different divisions, and then they end up, the winner of each division plays each other.
Yeah.
And that's a first round playoff game. You're essentially,
I love it.
But you could see a situation where that would be Indiana and Ohio State, who are the number 1 and 2 teams in the country, and they could be out in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think we're going to see that.
No.
What I want, though, is the playoffs to shorten and condense, and the college football season ends on January 1. That is the national championship. And this is Dan Lanning talks about this, and a lot of other coaches talk about it. The college football season ends at the Rose Bowl every single year. The national title game is at the Rose Bowl, January 1. And then the semifinals are the week before. The quarterfinals are the week before. The calendar really doesn't have to move all that much. If you want to have a little bit of a lag time and a break, then guess what? Start the season a week earlier, because half the teams playing quote unquote 0 week anyways. Move it up and have 0 week be actual week 1. And then you can have a little bit more of a runway right there. At that point, once you end the national championship game, you then have your coaching cycle can open up where coaches can then be hired. Then you have the transfer portal. Then you have signing day.
Yeah.
And that is a 3-week runway where you have 1 week of the coaching cycle. Week 2 is the transfer portal cycle. Week 3 is your signing day. It is by February 1st, those 3 cycles are done and college football is officially over.
Okay. So Jason, our producer, can you just clip that right there and send that into the NCAA and see if we can get that done? I love it. For the people that are mad at the coaches for leaving, though, I can tell you that you have to, from lived experience. In 2013, we were heading to the semifinals of the NIT. One of the youngest teams in the country. And I was one of the youngest head coaches in the country, and got offered one of those really big time jobs. I'll leave the school nameless, but it was in the ACC. And I had to make a decision if I was going to take the job or not. And I had my best team coming back after that year. We only had 1 senior graduating. I loved where I lived. I like all the things, right? Turned it down, and we lost in the championship game of the NIT that year. And new leadership came in, and I got fired 2 years later. So had 11 career-ending injuries, 6 ACL tears in 2 years, and things that you can't control. So for getting mad at coaches for being able to move when the opportunity and the iron is hot, you almost have to, because you just don't know what's going to change around you. And that probably wouldn't have happened to Lane, but I will never get angry and yell and scream. Now, the way that you do it is different, but being mad at someone for taking an opportunity is something I just don't think is fair.
No. And look, we want to be these arbiters of other people's happiness, and we just shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that who knows what's going to make Lane Kiffin happy.
Yeah.
Right. Because from the sounds of it, it's not boatloads of money. No. I don't know what it is. No. Like I honestly, I don't know what it is, because Lane Kiffin got fired in the NFL. He got fired at USC. He left Tennessee in the middle of the night. He had to go to Florida Atlantic. He had to be a coordinator for Nick Saban. And oh, by the way, Nick Saban also
Fired him.
didn't let him coach in the national championship game because he got a head coaching opportunity. Yet Nick Saban also said Lane Kiffin should coach Ole Miss, despite the fact he's taking a job somewhere else in the same conference. Didn't make sense. But Lane Kiffin leaving is fine. But you shouldn't be able to hire him during the season.
Agreed. Yeah. And
that's the biggest thing.
And for coaches out there, don't, as you said earlier, don't blow up the bridge that you're standing on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Lane knows how to do it better than anybody, though.
Well, this is going to be, it'll be fun next week to kind of see where we are. And these conference championship games are going to be fun to watch, whether or not they're going to matter in the grand scheme of the rankings. They are going to be fun football to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, man, let's transition into the wonderful world of the NFL. This is one of the, I don't know, strange is the right word, but sort of, we have different teams that we're talking about this time of year than some of them for decades that we haven't talked about. We've got the Bears and the Seahawks, I believe, tied for first place in the NFC going into December, which I don't know when, if ever, that has happened. But it is pretty cool to see these young coaches, young players, young quarterbacks, reclamation projects, and kind of the parity of what can happen if you get the coach right, you get the management right, the coach right. And it goes back to your point earlier about leadership. You get all those things right, and then you get the right quarterback. Your football team's going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and look, this is the beauty of the NFL right now is I don't, like everybody's saying, who's the best team in the NFC? I don't know. Who's the best team in the AFC? Because I'm currently wearing a New England Patriots sweatshirt. I am a New England Patriots fan. They are 10-2. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC. I don't think the Denver Broncos are the best team in the AFC.
They just keep winning, though.
Their records both say that they are, but I don't know who is, which means who's the best team in the NFL. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
And that's the really exciting part. Could you imagine if they had a top 25 in the NFL like they do in college football?
Luck.
It would be ridiculous.
Yeah, good luck.
To see how they would try to justify some of these teams. And that's the beauty of where the NFL is right now, is that you're looking at a little bit of a changing of the guard. The Chiefs losing on Thanksgiving Day to the Cowboys, boy, does that open things up, and it makes it really tough to imagine that they're going to get in. But also, they could backdoor their way into a wild card spot because there's a lack of not just great teams, but teams in the middle too. There's some really bad teams across the NFL.
Well, and the margin is so thin, right? And if you want to see how thin the margin is, that Sunday night game last night, which was super fun to watch, had a 3-8 Washington team and a 9-2 Denver team, right? Playing against each other. And shout out to Mariota, who's obviously an Oregon guy here and lives here locally, coming in and playing his tail off. But I mean, 1 point game that Washington has a chance to win on the last play of overtime is how now one team is 10-2 and one team is 3-9.
Yep.
And you watch those two teams on the field together last night. They didn't look like there's any difference between them talent-wise, the ability to win a game, but the season tells you that there is.
No doubt about it. And the turmoil and firing a coach like they have done across the NFL, that does not mean that it's the death sentence for your entire franchise. Because when you're firing your coach, it's all right, the season's already lost, but you have the paid professionals are still going to be competing. Because look, football's a sport where you cannot tank. Like, as much as people want to say like they want to tank, you can't, because you're going to get hurt. And the reality is, outside of like 5 to 7 guys on every roster, the other 48 to 50 guys, they're all expendable. And so they're playing for their next year and playing for their next opportunity, regardless of if you fire a coach and ownership wants to lose the rest of the year. There's way too much pride on the line for them to do that, because you don't have guaranteed contracts. Even guys that do have guaranteed contracts, it doesn't mean anything. Look at Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, who they drafted Michael Penix Jr., and he got hurt, but they're forced to play Cousins. It doesn't mean anything. No. They'll get rid of you as quickly as they possibly can.
I think the power of coaching, and I've talked about this multiple times, but I just think it goes back to, you look at a program like the Chicago Bears, who have not been really relevant since I believe 1984, right?
Yeah, they made a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman. Remember that?
No, I don't.
No, yeah, they did in like 2010 or 11.
Okay, all right. So
somewhere in
one
there,
time since 84.
8 or 9. Yeah,
So
they're bad though.
they've been over the years, right? But they finally get the quarterback first, right? Then
They've never had that.
right. Then they get the head coach, and I love Ben Johnson. I've never met him. All I've seen is what everybody else sees on TV. But that dude took his shirt off to make sure everybody in Chicago got a free hot dog.
That's right.
If you're willing to do that and not be too cool and kind of connect with the city, connect with your team, and do that kind of stuff. Obviously, he's an X and O genius and all the things that he does game plan wise. But that was the thing to me that was the most impressed I've been with him so far, is that he was willing to do that. And then I heard his guys talking about what he did after the game. Those are the kinds of connective tissue that make for a special person and make for special teams and special seasons.
There is not a coach that is successful outside of Bill Belichick that does not believe in that connectedness in the game of football.
Yeah.
Look at college. We started the show talking about high school, right?
Totally.
High school, college, the NFL. Andy Reid does a phenomenal job at it. The Harbaugh brothers, who are two of the best coaches in football at any level, period.
Players love them.
That is what they thrive on.
Yep.
Pete Carroll had that in Seattle. Like every great coach, that connectedness means something. And a lot of people mocked Nick Sirianni when he got taken over about, watering the flower and letting the flower grow. And people are like, shut up, man, especially Philly fans.
It's football.
Who were like,
watering flowers.
I don't care about flowers. They literally threw flowers at him after they lost the game one time and said, water this, right? But it was about building a relationship with his players. And you can tell his players are going to run through a wall for him at this point, because he doesn't just preach it, he believes it. Yeah. Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas, like everybody mocked that, and everybody mocks what Dallas is doing. There is not a player that has ever played for Brian Schottenheimer that does not say the exact same thing, which is, I love that guy. He's got my back no matter what.
So I think it's just a really important thing, and I believe in it deeply. Fear is a motivating factor.
Yes.
Right? But I think it's short. We talk about this on our youth sports podcast that we do all the time. But fear is a short-term way to motivate people. Long-term, best way, whether it's in sports, business, wherever you are, your children, is to get them to know that you love them, you care about them, you have a vision for them, you share their vision for them, and then our whole and our group. You get that kind of connective tissue, you're going to get people to do more and play harder for you and have better performances far more than if they start out scared of you.
Yeah.
And I think you see that all over the place. Now you have to have a healthy balance of respect, and it's not just a love fest all the time, but the ability to get people to believe in that is a powerful way to move an organization.
Yeah. And look, a lot of these rosters that haven't changed, but their success has, Denver and New England being a great example of that. Sean Payton and Mike Vrabel both got it. You don't have to be a lovey-dovey players coach guy. You can be a hard-ass Dan Campbell in Detroit.
His players love him.
But you got to find that way to connect.
Yeah.
And that is where success starts.
Yeah.
And I think you see it kind of across the board with a lot of these successful teams and these coaches. And it can be hard to turn that boat around. Look at Chicago as a great example of this. You have to have a quarterback and you have to have a head coach that know what the hell they're doing. Yep. And that those two things are the most important things to have a successful NFL team.
Well, lots of good football. I've heard this stated a lot over the last couple of weeks that real football starts in December. I would claim that it starts the day you show up for OTAs, but in any sport, those days matter too. But I think what they're really saying is the intensity level is going to ratchet up, and the sense of urgency about what a win does or a loss does really matters. So it's going to be a ton of fun to watch here over the next 5, 6, 7 weeks, both on the collegiate level and the pro level.
And I will tell you this, a team that nobody is really talking about because they went through their lumps, Tampa may be the best team in the NFC.
You think
when it's all said and done, they could finish the season on a 6-game winning streak. And how different they look if Bucky Irving stays healthy. Bucky Irving came back.
Yeah.
They look like a completely different football
Yeah.
team. And their final stretch is Atlanta twice, the Saints, or excuse me, Carolina twice, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Dolphins. They can win all 6 of those games and be a hot hand running into the playoffs. And I would not be stunned one bit if we're looking at them as that dangerous team when the playoffs start.
Well, and for Baker, it just make Baker Mayfield just a cool story of kind of his being able to watch these guys grow up, right? We don't know these guys, but you get a chance to see, and kind of what happens behind the scenes, having been in athletics, and that maturation process for him, and seeing him grow and develop and turn into what he's turned into, the unquestioned leader and respected by his teammates, is a pretty remarkable thing to see.
And if they have a healthy Bucky Irving, they've got Chris Godwin back. Emeka Egbuka has been outstanding, the rookie out of Ohio State. So, and then we could see Mike Evans in the twilight of his career. He had a collarbone
injury. Is there
injury.
a chance? I was watching the game when he got hurt. Is there a chance that he can come back?
He's going to start practicing according to
Are they opening
Todd
his
Bowles,
21-day window?
He could start practicing as soon as this week. So we could see Mike Evans coming back. And if they start getting other weapons healthy again, watch out, because they lost 4 games in a row, but they didn't have their running back. They didn't have their 2 stalwart receivers. They were working through some stuff. If they can get healthy, watch out. Think of this, man. They were without Jalen McMillan, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. Like, good luck winning in the NFL that way.
That's right.
But Emeka Egbuka has stepped up. Chris Godwin is back, and now Bucky Irving's back to go with the Rashad White. They could be dangerous offensively moving forward.
All right, I'm marking that down. All right, man. Well, lots of good stuff. We were going to talk about the business of college football today, but I think there's a whole conversation to be had about that, the business of sport. And I'm going to wait until we've got a lull in between in the college football season during bowl week. Bowl weeks, we'll talk about that. Dusty, this has been so much fun, man. I love these conversations. What is your question of the day for me? And then I'll ask you one too at the end here, so we can talk about the rivalry thing.
I want to know about the BYU Utah rivalry. I do want to know about that.
Okay. So my first year at Utah, I walk in, we're getting ready to play. We're ranked, 13th in the country in the middle of a 22-game win streak, and pretty level. And that week of that rivalry, I walk into the building for the day after the last week's game, and the tension and the level of intensity in that building was ratcheted up because the men played and the women played on the same week. So, and we shared a space. It was crazy, the feeling of it. But that's not the part that mattered. So we get down to Provo, and we walk in, go through warm-ups, and get back in the locker room and go back in at 10 minutes, right? And the captain of the team, Morgan Warburton was her name at the time, pulls out this little basket full of pieces of tape that said BYU on each one of them. And every one of the players and coaches puts that piece of tape in their shoe. So on the bottom of, not the bottom of the shoe, but in the sole of their shoe, so that every single time you take a step, you're stomping on BYU. It's been a tradition for 30 years.
Love that.
Every BYU women's basketball game. That particular game, we came out and went ahead 22-0 to start the game, and ended up they hit a 3 to 22-3, and then we came down and made another basket and went up 25-3, and the ball game was over. But it put that in your shoes so that every single time you're stomping on BYU. And
I love that.
Oh, it's so awesome. It was one of those things that I had never experienced anything quite like that, but a tangible thing that every single person in the program that's ever been a Utah women's basketball player has done for the last at least 30 years.
Oh my God. That is, the Holy War means something, man.
Oh man, I've got some stories on that. Those rivalries aren't just about the game, right? Those rivalries, when you live in the same state or an adjoining state, is the recruiting battles, the going to the grocery store with both Utah and BYU fans. Like it is something that is hard to describe. And for all those people out there that just say, well, this is another game, It's bullshit. It's not just another game. When you're playing a team like that you compete against, because you don't compete against every single team in your league every day. You compete against your rival every day. Like it is, you wake up thinking like Jed Fish has on his wall, right? What did you do to beat Oregon today or whatever that is? That's that same mindset. And when you get to finally get game day, it's different. I don't care what anybody tells you. It's not just another game.
Yeah, I love when coaches lean into it and acknowledge, no, it's totally different. This is
totally
not just
different.
a normal game. I hated the nameless, faceless opponent thing. No, there are opponents that are different. And if you get to a level where your program is really good, you become that for everybody. But there's always one team where you mutually hate each other as much.
Yeah, and it goes across the board, right? So my daughter, here's another good rivalry story. My daughter was 3 years old and broke her arm, little break in her arm when she fell in the backyard of our house, and we take her into the hospital, and they bring out the color wheel for the cast, and blue was the first one that they showed her, and she says, "No, we don't wear BIU blue in our house." So it is a there was a bright red cast on that kid's arm.
I love that. I love it. Lean into it.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for doing this. If you like what we're doing, send us a message. If you want to hear something else that you want to hear about, give us a like, and looking forward to another incredible week of sports.
Let's go. Conference championship weekend. There is a lot on the line.
There is.
And maybe not for getting into playoffs, but at the same time, it is, you mentioned it. It's always good to win a conference championship.
It's better than good. It is. It's one of those things that those kids will remember for the rest of their lives, right? It's better to win a national championship, but winning a conference championship is something that goes with you for the rest of your life.
Whew, let's go.
All right, man.